Hello, Bill. How are things in Belize?
Well, they're fine, Steve. Actually, I've just left Belize and I'm now in the States.
Oh, well, welcome back to the States, Bill. I'm sure you're kind of happy to be back there.
Yeah, it's been a long road. We've been working real hard down there in Belize.
Bill, if we could briefly touch on the 1st of February announcement and an amendment to the farm out agreement with BCE. You basically acquired a further 10% working interest on completion of a further 61 kilometre lines of 2D seismic. Could you please update everyone on where you're heading with this?
Well, what we've done actually, we've amended the Blue Creek Exploration Farm Out Agreement to include an additional 10% working interest to come at us, not an additional, to include a 10% working interest to come at us sooner than agreed to in the documents before in exchange for shooting 61 line kilometers of additional data. The reason why we've shot the 61, or rather are shooting the 61 line kilometers of additional data, is to better define trap geometry in the subsurface. We feel we have a good understanding of it now. What we want is we want a better understanding so we can further de-risk the prospects before we drill them. That was the reason for that. The original farm out agreement had us phase 1 earning 12.5%, phase 2 earning another 12.5%, phase 3 was the first well, which earned us 37.5%, and phase 4, the second well, the last 37.5%. The farm out agreement has been amended now where phase 1 and 2 remain the same, but we've added a phase 3, which earns us into 10% working interest in addition to the first two 12.5% for the 61 line kilometers. Then that brought the percent working interest for the two drill wells down from 37.5 to 32.5% each. So that's where we're at. We're about 20% of the way through the 61 line kilometers right now.
Moving on to the recent capital you've raised, how much money will go towards Belize and what will it be used for?
Well, clearly, Belize is our primary target at this point. In other words, it is our first drillable project. So the bulk of the money will be going towards Belize. However, we have an active seismic crew in Jutland right now in Denmark. But the bulk of the money will be going towards Belize because Belize just represents such huge upside and such huge value for the company.
Do you imagine you'll require any other funding up to and including drilling Belize in Q3?
Well, I can't answer that question just yet because right now we have two targets we can drill once we make the election to drill them as per the farm out agreements upon completion of the seismic program. We actually have 5 prospects. One of them we call a lead because it's basically bisected by the border of Belize and Mexico, and our PSA does not allow us, or does not cover, accumulations, if you will, in Mexico. So we call that one a lead. And we're seeing another prospect, possibly two, come out of this additional seismic. So basically, I can't put a finger on it, but I can tell you we have a very, very active data room. We've had a couple of majors looking at us. Our seismic contractor has asked to take shares in place of cash for their work, which is also a vote of confidence in the subsurface. These are experienced seismic acquisition people that are also geophysicists, and we're also talking to a drilling contractor to take on working interest in exchange for their services. So, until these negotiations are complete, I can't narrow down exactly how much money we'll be putting towards Belize and how much we'll be farming out. It's a bit premature at this point.
Okay, all to be revealed.
Right.
When are you hoping to mobilize the base camp, Bill? I know you've been delayed by weather.
I hear a talk on the chat boards about Belize and weather. Belize really doesn't have 4 seasons to speak of, although some Belizeans would argue with that. In my view, you have 2 seasons in Belize. It's either wet or it's very wet, and it both happens in the same day. And so, to be specific about it, we've had a little more rain during the dry season than we thought we'd have. And we know whenever you have rain, you have really wet and soggy ground, which is hard to move anything of any weight. But to answer the question, we are actually mobilizing the base camp for drilling right now. We have found a structure which is actually already constructed. We're getting ready to, if you will, do some add-ons and upgrades to that. We already have a storage facility for our equipment and whatnot. And we already have a base camp for our seismic operations, which holds over 200 people right now. The seismic operations are ongoing in a different area than where drilling may take place. And the base camp area is closer to where drilling may take place. So to answer the question, mobilization of the base camp for drilling is ongoing at this time.
Can you take me through the expected timeline from spud to target depth and the announcement of that result?
Well, starting with Belize, we expect Phase 3 seismic, which will have earned us into 35% working interest, to be complete sometime by the end of April, weather permitting. By the middle of May, we'll have an update to the CPR. Then we're going to go into a fourth phase of seismic, which is over what's called the Project for Belize lands. This is a land, it's a low-lying area which has had freestanding water. It's a very, very environmentally sensitive area, and so we're going through a very complicated environmental impact analysis and permitting process. The Belizeans are very, very sensitive about their environment and the ecology, as we are. And so it's taken a little bit longer, but we expect to have the Phase 4 done, Phase 4 seismic done by June 30th, with an update to the CPR, which is a consolidated update of all the phases of seismic by mid-July. As I said earlier, the base camp is mobilizing, and I think we'll have the complete mobilization of the base camp and all of the communication skid, the water pressurization, purification skid, all the other pieces of equipment that are required to have an active, functional base camp sometime by June the 1st. We expect to start mobilizing the drilling rig sometime in August. And I say sometime in August because that's when, we've got to pick a window of about 2 weeks where we think there's going to be a dry spell. Unfortunately, the summertime in the northern hemisphere is really the wet season down in Belize. That's when hurricane season is and so on. Although we're not affected by hurricanes as we're way, way inland, we are affected by heavy rains during that period of time. So we're saying sometime during the month of August to as late as mid-September, we'll have the rig mobilized up and on our first drill site should we make the election point as per our farm-out agreement to drill, which a few of us have a little doubt that will not happen.
Okay.
Now, the other issues on the timeline is, so if we have the rig mobbed and on location by the end of August, mid-end of August, we'll start drilling within 2 weeks after that. We expect to have results from the first drill well by mid-December, which gives us a CPR update by the 22nd of December. And then we'll move the rig to the second drill location, which will obviously be slowed down by the holidays and so on. But we expect that to happen over about a 4 or 5 week period, to start somewhere in the early part of February with results somewhere in the early part of April, with an update to the CPR for the second well by late April of next year. So we're getting right after it in Belize, as we've done from the very beginning.
Bill, just a wild question here. I don't know if you've ever considered it, but do you have any idea of likely flow rates compared to other fields out there?
Well, Steve, that would be unfair of me to guess. I can tell you that Spanish Lookout produces their wells between 800 and 1,200 barrels a day. Given the reservoir data that I've seen, that I've been made aware of, those rates look highly achievable, if you will. out in our area. In fact, we've used those rates in our indicative valuations that the CP has generated in the CPR. So the flow rates of 1,000 to 1,500 barrels a day are entirely reasonable if you're going to put together a cash flow forecast to assume both an estimated ultimate recoverable volume of reserves and its cumulative cash flow value.
Finally, on the 3rd of Jan, you announced that the company had established a virtual data room with RPS. Could you comment any further on its progress, and if so, when is the company hoping to announce a Farmin partner? I know you've mentioned this earlier. Do you have a date in mind?
Well, I can't give you a fixed date in mind because they're moving targets. I can tell you this. What we've decided to do is to hang on to a large piece of the upside. I'll talk in terms of numbers which have been reported, which will help you understand better. On just the first 2 prospects alone in Belize, the indicative value the CP has put on them is 7.1 billion NPV 10 P50. Now, when a large oil company comes in to farm into a project for reserve replacement purposes or for the purposes that they're very interested in the prospect itself, is what they do is they farm into the entire PSA, not just a prospect or two, typically, and they take over operatorship. They'll make a commitment to drill or spend a capex amount of money to X. Then after that, we will step in and as a minority partner, and we both move forward paying our way. So the big guys, the majors that have been looking at us have been talking really industry standard farm outs where they would take 60-70% of us for the cost of 2 wells, and they would operate. And then after that cost of those 2 wells has been expended, we would step in for our 30 to 40% working interest. Well, what that translates to is that we would be farming out or giving up 60 to 70% of 120 to 1 uplift for the cost of 2 wells for $20 million, $18 million, somewhere in there. Now you weigh that against a smaller farming, a drilling contractor and seismic contractor coming in and taking shares for their services, and in the case of the drilling contractor, shares in cash, and a reduced rate for the cost of his wells. At a much lesser working interest level, you're talking about a 5 to 10% working interest level. Well, that leaves a considerable amount more upside to our shareholders, and that's really the components of the variables, if you will, of the word problem that we've been working for the last 6 to 8 weeks with respect to how much money should we raise versus how much should we farm out to optimize the value that we deliver to our shareholders. And I think the answer's been expressed in our last announcement, which is we've decided to raise just the amount of money we need to get 2 wells drilled down in Belize, to minimize dilution to our shareholders and also to maximize our exposure to upside. And we'll augment that with participation from contractors to reduce our cost. So again, we can be in a position to maximize delivering as much multiple as we can to our shareholder in uplift.
Thank you, Bill. Great answers. Great to talk to you. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care.